Welcome back to Community Focus right here on these very same Salem Network stations. I'm your host, Noah Dingley, going to be with you for the next half hour. Going to be doing an interview where we've already talked about the organization. We're going to get a refresher, also a different perspective, and they got a lot going on. So I wanted to have EcoLife back into the studio. This time, Bill Toone, the founder of the organization. And we're going to talk about some stories, how it got started and what it's all about. That's really going to get you to think about conservation in a different way. But first of all, Bill, welcome to the show.
Hello, Noah. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. First off, where were you at before EcoLife got started? Let's start there. And then let's get into what gave you the vision of starting EcoLife.
I was one of these kids who always loved animals. I grew up here in San Diego.
Okay.
I actually applied for my job at the San Diego Zoo when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And they refused to hire me, unfortunately. But they did write me a letter that said if I came back when I was 16, they'd give me a job. I went back to the zoo when I was 16 years old. They gave me a job. I slowly worked myself up, and they helped me go off to graduate school where I studied reproductive failure in birds and ended up studying the California condor.
Wow. I mean, not very many kids about the age of 8 are really eager to start their career with the zoo or anybody, you know?
I wanted to start when I was 6, but they wouldn't answer any letters then. So.
Well, that's great. I mean, I'm a big proponent of the zoo. They do great work down there. So how did that get you kind of pushed towards maybe a vision of starting a company like EcoLife?
Well, when I was involved in the Condor program, which was, as many will remember, a very high-profile, dramatic program. It was very exciting to be involved in it. But one of the emotional moments in that program for me was when I picked up the very first California condor egg to bring it into captivity. And I knew that according to the recovery plan, that chick would never fly free in the wild. And so on that day, I promised myself to stay in the program until we put a bird back. Well, when that happened, that was great. I knew I was going to quit the recovery team, but I really didn't know what I was going to do after that. So I found myself working in Papua New Guinea, collecting birds and following some studies on old growth logging there, and really found I enjoyed tropical work. And over the years, I gained a bit of a reputation for being willing to go off to weird places and do that. So EcoLife really came about in the early seeds of it, without me realizing it, began around 1995 when I was hired to lead an expedition in Madagascar.
And you've obviously you enjoy travel and seeing new places and the wildlife and the ecosystems there, and seeing how we can maybe do things better here in the States.
Absolutely. One of the interesting things about working all around the world is that one of the common questions I would get is, it's really great that you're here telling us how to do this or how to do that, but look at the way you guys do it. So I quickly came to learn that you really were not going to have any credibility doing programs like this on an international basis unless you were active in doing the same sorts of things at home.
Now, have we come a long way since then in getting better at our conservation efforts and maybe the way we kind of look at the whole ecosystem?
Yes and no. We get better accidentally. There's not yet, at least in my mind, a great plan for moving it forward, but there's little things that help the world. For example, we lead expeditions every year into Kenya and Uganda, and people are always shocked. We'll meet a Maasai warrior somewhere and we'll be chatting, and all of a sudden they'll reach into their drapes and pull out a cell phone. Well, this is a country that's not going to need power lines or telephone lines because of the progress that's been made in developed nations. And so we are doing things that are helpful as we go along, but we are the biggest consumers, and there's a lot more that we can do.
Now, you guys have a lot going on. We're going to try and touch on as much as we can. One of the things we touched on a lot last time, I'd kind of like to give a refresher to our audience. Tell us a little bit about your aquaponics program at EcoLife. That's a big part of it.
It is a big part of it. Aquaponics is, we have really two programs within EcoLife, and Aquaponics is one that has the greatest application here at home.
Okay.
Aquaponics is all about sustainable agriculture. And just to explain why, as a conservationist, we chose to do sustainable agriculture, the leading cause of species extinction is the loss of habitat. And the number one cause of habitat loss is agriculture. It's the biggest contributor to climate change, and it's a big user of water. And yet it's absolutely essential to what each of us do every day. We have to be able to eat. So if you want to do great conservation, you can't really ignore agriculture. You have to step up there.
And a lot of people don't take it, I think, as seriously as they need to. It's like, oh, well, we live in the modern world. We have to do things, in a more forward-thinking manner. Well, I guess that's true to some extent, but you can't forget our surroundings and what's around us.
That's right. California, especially Southern California, we're essentially living in a desert. We've just come through a 6-year drought here. But our drought will never really end in the sense that we ran out of available water in California for people about 100 years ago. We've been importing all the excess that we need ever since then. And where this impacts agriculture is if you take just one segment of our agriculture right now, and let's pick on lettuce growing. California is second only to the country of China in the production of lettuce. 95% of all the lettuce distributed in the United States comes out of California. And we don't have the water to grow it. It takes about 12 gallons a head to grow that lettuce. In Salinas, the ground is pancaking as we wipe out underwater reservoirs. So it's a huge issue. Right now, California uses, it's hard to visualize this, but picture a wall of water 11.5 times the height of Mount Everest and 1 acre size in footprint. And that's what goes into lettuce every year.
Wow.
We can produce, using aquaponics, that same amount of lettuce with 1/10 of the water. And that would provide water for 6 million families in California.
Well, that really gets back to what you and I were talking about off the air, one of your visions for the backbone for EcoLife, and that's revolutionizing the way you think about, conserving in a better manner. I mean, we have to try and work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. I look back with great warmth on my years in the California Condor program, and I learned a lot. It was a great education. And we have a California condor around today to talk about still, which is pretty cool. But at the same time that we were saving that species, we lost thousands and thousands of others. And so this one species at a time sort of program is not going to work. We have to look at the big issues of habitat loss. There's a great story with elephants right now. We just learned over the last 6 or 8 months that there's only about 400,000 African elephants left, and they're being poached at a rate of about 30 to 35,000 animals per year, which means in the next few years, we're not going to have African elephants anymore.
Yeah.
But if you look at the data on African elephants and start in the 30s, there's about 7 million elephants missing that were not poached. And that's a lot of elephants.
That's a lot of elephants.
Over that period of time, you would estimate that maybe 2.5 million would have been poached, but more than 7 million are missing, and they're missing because of habitat loss.
Wow. If people want to find out more about what you guys do, the way that you guys think, maybe become a part of it, they can go to ecolifeconservation.org, and there they can find out how they can get involved. What are some of the ways that if someone wants to go onto your website, maybe just have a better understanding of this information, or if they want to become a part of it, how can they do that?
Yeah, there's lots of ways. Kate Cole, who was on with you the last time, runs a very dynamic volunteer and internship program at EcoLife. People who are students, people who just want to help in the community. We've got a little farm they can participate in. There's office work people can do, remote computer work. So there's lots of opportunities for people to get themselves involved in it and bring the rest of their community along. We want to build a family.
That's what it's about. And it's like you were talking about off the air again as well. The great thing about EcoLife is, and I want to get into the story because this just fascinated me, but you want to take care of animals and the environment, but you also want to take care of people.
Absolutely.
It's 50-50.
Yeah, one of the things I've learned as a biologist is that if you have a fox and an endangered bird, the fox is going to eat that endangered bird to feed its family.
Yeah.
And I think that applies just as equally to human beings. We have one of our highest levels of protection for habitat in the United States is a national refuge. And when we talk about running out of oil, we immediately talk about drilling in a refuge. If we need it, we will go and get it. So the way you solve these problems is reduce need so that we aren't put in that position where we will go and get it, because people will take care of themselves. So conservation, in order for it to work, needs to be about people and taking care of ourselves.
Now, tell us how, I mean, it's obviously something that's very easy to understand, but when you saw the way it was dealt with in a different perspective, something that touched you very close and personal, it really got you to have this new way of thinking, this way that is kind of the backbone of EcoLife. Tell us the story that you told me off the air about this little child that was so warm and close to your heart.
Yeah, I was doing biological assays in Madagascar, and we were working on a peninsula in the northeast called the Massois. And there we found a little community of people living in the forest. And I was asked to go and live and educate people in that community about living now within a national park, rather than move them. When I went to the village, I was, Vaza is the term for a foreigner who comes in. And they said, no, Vaza cannot live here. And so that meant I had to have my tent out in the forest, which is not really safe. So after several weeks of really trying to make friends in this community and failing miserably, I was literally packing to go home. I had given up. And there was a little 18-month-old boy who was hiding under the bushes watching me. And it was the first time a child hadn't run away. And he and I slowly, over a long hours that day, and then over several more days, started developing a relationship. And finally, he brought other little kids to my camp, and then their moms would come to my camp. And after a bit of time, my tent got moved into the village, and we were family then. And I worked there on and off from 1997 until fall of 1999.
Okay.
And when I went to leave at the end of 1999, we were family at that point. And the village threw a huge party the night before and cried buckets. It was really awful, and saying goodbye to everyone. And my wife was with me, and we vowed to leave early in the next morning before anyone woke up so that we didn't have to go through it again.
Yeah.
And we were intercepted in the wee hours of the morning by Elian's mom and dad with a little bag with his belongings in it, and they gave us their son.
Wow.
And it was touching. Elian and I had been really, really close, but there was no way I could explain to them that there was also no way I could take him.
Yeah.
And we literally did what I did at the end of the Condor program. We turned around, we walked away, we were done. And 5 months later, that village was hit by a horrific storm. And I went to all the conservation groups who had supported my work and told them I was interested in going back and see if we could help and find people and see who had lived and who had died. And everyone said no. All the conservation groups said conservation. We do animals, not people. And it was a revelation. And sadly, sometimes it takes really horrific things to make you examine things you've believed in all of your life.
Yeah.
And I had grown up loving animals and believing in conservation. And when it was a little boy that mattered to me and that world turned its back the way it did, it was numbing. It broke my heart. And so that was the origins of EcoLife. I vowed I was not going to give up on conservation. It is absolutely essential to our survival. But I was going to do it differently. I was never going to walk away from a little boy in the forest again and not be able to help if there was a need to help. And that's where EcoLife comes from. So we do agriculture at home. We do these fuel-efficient stoves in developing countries, which are a really, really big player in human health, as well as conservation of the environment.
That's a touching story. I've heard it twice. I'm just as moved the second time and trying to keep it together here on the air. Well, you touched on the fuel-efficient stove program. By the way, if you're just joining us, community focus, Bill Toone, the founder of EcoLife. We've had EcoLife on the show before, getting a refresher, getting some new perspective. But about the fuel efficiency stove program, you guys are kind of at the tail end of a program here. Tell us a bit about that. If people want to get involved, how they can maybe participate.
Sure. So the stove program is pretty critical, and it's one of these things that most people don't know much about.
Okay.
We're on a planet with over 7 billion people on it, and what most people don't realize is that 3 billion of those people still cook over an open fire generally on 3 rocks on the floor of their house. There's no chimney. There's no protection for the kids. For these families, for 3 billion people, it's the equivalent of smoking 5 to 7 packages of cigarettes a day.
Wow.
It results in the death of nearly 4 million people a year, mostly women and children, because they're the ones exposed to the smoke all day long. It's also about the 5th leading cause of deforestation and therefore species extinction in the world. So we build stoves that have a chimney to take smoke out of the house, that use the same fuel they would use, so they're still cutting trees, but it uses 50% less fuel. So our big program right now is located in the state of Michoacan in Mexico, where the monarch butterfly spends the winter. When we've launched a 4-year program right now that'll put in 25,000 stoves that'll completely surround the monarch butterfly reserves. And those stoves will collectively save 250,000 trees a year.
Wow, that's a lot of trees.
It's a lot of trees. And it'll protect tens of thousands of people from respiratory ailments, eye disease, and very, very serious burns for little kids.
And what's the best way if someone wants to be able to become a part of that, that they can help you guys out and make sure that this is successful?
This is a really exciting time right now. Up until Tuesday, May 23rd, we've had a donor step up with $250,000 and said that they will match any gift up to $250,000 that comes in between now and May 23rd. If it's a new donor, someone who's never given before, they'll match that gift at 150%.
Wow.
If that person chooses to be a monthly donor at $2 or $5 or whatever it is, it'll get matched at 150% for the rest of the year. So this is a great time where your money can be doubled or multiplied by 150 and be put right to work to help people and protect resources.
And again, if you guys are looking for a great 501c3, a lot of you, including myself, just like having these nonprofits at the forefront and just giving back to the world and doing something astronomical and exceptional, I can't think of one that's better. And if you want to do it, I'm assuming EcoLifeConservation.org is where they go to help out.
That's right. If you go to EcoLifeConservation.org, there's a donate button right there. And at the moment, there's a big old thermometer showing how we're doing on our campaign. We've only got about $12,000 to go, so a handful of people could make a big, big difference.
And, you know, and I always say this when we're talking about stuff like this. Someone says, well, I can only, do a little, or I can only do a small amount. If everybody that had that mindset made an effort, it would be accomplished in no time.
Right. The only thing you can do wrong is to do nothing. There's no such thing as too small of a gift. And it's funny because I don't know if it's how we present it or what, but I often have people come up to me and say, will you take a small gift? That's what we live on.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course we'll take a small gift. That is our bread and butter. We're blessed when someone comes up with $250,000. But we live on $5 gifts.
Well, and a lot of all of your nonprofits, I mean, that's how you guys survive. You guys do great work, but you can't do it unfortunately, you can't do it without money.
That's right. That's right.
Part of what we just talked about, in the middle of that, we were talking about the Monarch Butterflies, and I know that you actually take people to go see this migration as well. Yeah.
With each of our programs, what we try to do is connect a conservation issue, a humanitarian issue, and then something we can solve. So the monarch butterfly, 30 years ago, about 1 billion monarch butterflies would spend the winter in Mexico in one little area of forest. And it's pretty spectacular. We're down now in 30 years to 140 million of them doing it. It's still pretty spectacular, but it's a huge decline. And a lot of that decline is attributed to agricultural practices at home. So our programs can help here, but also to the decimation of the forest that protects the butterflies from the cold winters in Mexico. So the stove program works really well with making sure that all matches up. So we bring people down, let them meet the families that they've helped, and see the monarch butterflies.
How many times a year do you guys do that?
So that's once a year because it's based on the migration of the butterfly.
Got it.
So they're just there. They arrive around Day of the Dead in November. But they're resting through most of the winter. We go in the springtime when they're getting restless and thinking about flying north.
And with all your different programs, how many other countries are you in? How is the world impacted by EcoLife?
Right now, we're in 4 countries, including our own. So we're in the U.S., we're in Mexico, we're in Uganda, and we're in Kenya. In Uganda, we bring people there as well. So in Uganda, we selected the mountain gorillas in the Bwindi impenetrable forest, and the Batwa people are the people we serve. The Batwa are the pygmies from the forest people.
Okay.
And so we have a wonderful program of stoves there. It's run by women. They're building up to 500 stoves a year right now and really doing a great job.
That's awesome.
They're amazing. And in Kenya, we work with the Samburu people who are very similar to the Maasai, a very lean, very tall people. And we've had wonderful training programs between Maasai, Samburu, and the Batwa pygmies that are just hysterical, 5 different languages and from the shortest to the tallest, but everybody fighting together to do one thing. And that's the rub, Bill. No matter where you're going, whether it's Mexico or the Uganda or your perspective from the U.S.,
You really just want to just live in harmony and just make sure that your surroundings are taken care of, that your family is taken care of. It's all about translating it and doing it better for the common good. And maybe someone has a different way that we can learn from.
That's right. Absolutely. It's funny. My wife and I do a lot of rainwater harvesting at home.
Okay.
And we learned everything we know about rainwater harvesting from the little village in Madagascar, because dirty water is the bane of their existence, and the only clean water really is rainwater. And so using little bits of bamboo and everything else, they would collect the water coming off their palm thatched roofs.
Yeah.
And we brought that same philosophy home, and we collect thousands and thousands of gallons of water at home. But you can learn from all of these places in very different perspectives. And if you don't learn something, you'll get a good laugh out of it anyway.
There you go. There you go. And laughter is the key to life, for sure.
That.
Well, if you go to ecolifeconservation.org, you're also going to find that you can maybe sign up for an internship. There's travel opportunities. There's also ways to volunteer. Tell us about your annual gala that you guys have every year, too.
Yeah, so every fall we have a big party. We get everybody together. I encourage you to go on our website and look for businesses. There's sponsorship opportunities for individuals. It's just a nice time. We have so many people who make friends through the events that this is their chance to hook up again and find their friends and spend an evening with wonderful meals. We'll be in Escondido this year. We've got a great facility and a great party lined up.
Excellent. Well, we are about 4 minutes away from the end of a tremendous segment. I like the way Bill thinks. I could talk to him probably for another couple of hours and just keep going, but my show's not that long. In the last couple of minutes we have Bill, by the way, Bill Toone, founder, EcoLife. We're glad to have him in. We're going to have him in more in the future. What would you like to maybe get across to our listening audience, maybe coming back to revolutionizing the way that we think about conservation?
Yeah, it's interesting because this was a big evolution for me to go from single species programs and habitat programs like national parks to stoves and agriculture and trying to find this human balance and things. So for the last 16 years, that's what I've been doing. And I learned from having been so certain during the Condor years that what I was doing was right. Now I've learned to question every day. And so we had an interesting opportunity come up where a handful of donors got together and after 16 years said, would you consider going back to Madagascar to look for your little boy again? And we took that opportunity to go do that. And there's a couple of funny little twists on that happened back to back that's just almost too strange to believe. But we went back, and after several weeks of tromping around, we found people from our community, and we ultimately found our little boy, Elian. He's a new father. And I sat one evening in the village watching his girlfriend and his little baby in their house. She had an open fire on the floor, the place billowing with smoke, and the baby rubbing its eyes. And I thought, oh my gosh, we've been doing the right thing, at least on the stove front. That's right. These people need this so much. We packed up, we said goodbye, and it was a much nicer way to say goodbye than the last time 16 years ago. And we left. We got home, and strangely enough, the largest cyclone since the last time we were there lined up to do exactly the same thing.
Wow.
We were able to get messages back to them, though. They were able to get to higher ground, and nobody was killed this time. But their crops were wiped out. And one of the reasons the cyclone had such a huge impact was because as rice farmers, they've denuded the forest right down to the water's edge. And when these storms come, there's nothing to hold the soil and protect their communities. So between the stoves and the agriculture, everything just came back as this ratification that these are the things we need to be focused on. If we gave everyone in the world the stove that they need, it would be the equivalent of taking every vehicle off the road in the United States, Canada, Europe, Australia, parts of South America. It would have a huge impact on our environment, and it would save a lot of lives.
In a big way.
Yep.
Well, we love what you do here at the station, and specifically the show. And let's keep bringing you in, talk about the different opportunities and events you guys have, and let's make a difference out there, Bill.
Great. Thanks, Noah. Pleasure to be here.
Well, Bill Toone from EcoLife. Bill, if people want to contact you directly, I hope you don't mind. You're on the spot. How do they do that?
I don't mind. They can use my first initial and last name, B. Toone, at ecolifeconservation.org. And
Okay.
I'm manic about watching my email.
Excellent.
So they'll get directly to me, and I'll get back to it quickly unless I'm traveling. And usually it'll have an automatic responder that'll tell you if I'm traveling.
This is your opportunity to email Bill in the middle of the night, which if he's traveling, it'll be probably mid-morning for him. So do that anyway.
That's right. I'd love to hear from you.
Bill, thanks so much.
Pleasure.
And it's a great having EcoLife on the show. You want to check him out, ecolifeconservation.org. Email Bill in the dead of the night or call 760-740-1346. It's been a pleasure. I'm Noah Dingley, right here on Community Focus. More coming up on these very same Salem network stations.